week 3 of Max Holloway's training camp in Hawaii. And the atmosphere inside
The BMF title fight between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira isn't just another rematch. It's about to expose something massive that nobody's talking about. While everyone's debating who wins, they're missing the real story here. This fight is happening because their first encounter back in 2015 ended in controversy, and now both fighters have completely different motivations that could tear the lightweight division apart. Max isn't even treating Charles like his final destination. He's openly admitted he sees this as just another step toward reclaiming the undisputed championship. Meanwhile, Charles specifically requested this fight, and when you understand why, everything about this matchup becomes crystal clear.
We know you're going to throw down, but what does it look like stylistically?
It's going to be a fun fight, you know. He's a fighter. He's your fighter's favorite fighter. I'm your fighter's favorite fighter. And that's what you're going to get, you know. A lot of fans online, they're kind of heartbroken about this fight happening, you know. So at the end of the day, I get it. It is what it is. Whenever you get a Charles Oliveira, whatever you get myself fighting, you know it's going to be a fight. So I'm excited.
I'm going to slightly lean Charles. And I'm not a Charles hater by any means. I love watching Charles Oliveira fights. I appreciate what he's done. I get why everybody loves him. But I have always been sort of I don't know if he's as good as people say. Obviously, he's got all the finishes, but I'm still going to lean him here. I think this is going to be an absolute banger. For the love of God, picks can change. If you are watching this video and UFC 326 is in a few days, you're watching the wrong video. I promise you, I have broken this down several times since then. So hang up, before you leave, hang up, go find a newer video and watch that. But I'm going to slight lean Charles here. I love Charles. He's exciting. I've questioned his accolades in the past. I love Max Holloway. He's exciting. Never really questioned his accolades.
Here's where it gets absolutely wild. The early word on the street has Charles "Dubronx" Oliveira as the betting favorite, but that's not what makes this fight so dangerous. Both of these legends know that this BMF belt carries way more weight than people realize. For Max, this is his chance to prove that his 2015 victory wasn't some fluke or lucky break. He's been carrying that question mark for years, and it's been eating at him. But here's what's really interesting about Max's approach. He's not viewing Charles as the ultimate prize. He's treating Oliveira like a crucial piece in a much larger chess game he's playing. This isn't just some casual title defense or an enjoyable side quest. Max plainly sees this entire encounter as another significant step toward recapturing that undisputed championship belt that Islam Makhachev currently holds. And get this, Max has made it crystal clear that the BMF title won't change his fighting style one bit. He's going to bring that same relentless volume striking that's made him legendary, which means we're about to witness an absolute war from the opening bell.
Pick the best position because the long guy, got to get up. And then the guy on the top should be winning most of the rounds, right? Because the guy at the bottom should be like time managing, just being smart. If I told you we down, we need to get back, that's a whole different fight. But right now, I was trying to make you guys manage. When you guys on top, you guys manage holding, you guys manage winning, you know? When we're bottom, just manage surviving sometimes. Just survive, get to the next round, who cares, you know? Right now's a good time. We'll have times of fights where we're gonna be like, get the hell up, Brad, get the hell up, L. But that's not it right now, you know? Right here. I was telling you guys, the first takedown, take control of that. Don't think you...
For Max Holloway. Max, this is the 5th BMF fight now. You've been in 3 of them. You and Charles enter this matchup with the most combined wins in the UFC of any fight in UFC history. In your opinion, is this the most BMF-worthy fight we've had yet?
For sure, you know, I can't wait. You know, we have some unfinished business from 11 years ago, so we get to go out there and finally figure it out.
But wait, it gets even more fascinating when you dive into what Max really thinks about Charles' skill set. Holloway didn't just acknowledge Oliveira's world-class jiu-jitsu game that everyone knows about. He went out of his way to specifically mention the serious damage Charles delivers with his hands and feet before the fight ever hits the canvas. This acknowledgement is incredibly significant because it shows that Max knows this won't be some clean, technical striking match. He's anticipating pure chaos from the first exchange. Charles has this relentless, multifaceted offensive attack that can come from anywhere at any time, and Max has seen the tape. He knows that Oliveira inflicts massive damage on opponents through sheer violence and unpredictability. What this tells us is that Max is preparing for a firefight, not a point-fighting contest. And honestly, that might be exactly what Charles wants.
Being the only guy to defend the BMF belt, it's cool and all, you know, but just another record, you know. At the end of the day, I can't sit here, relax, and smell the roses. We gotta keep going, we gotta keep trucking, you know. Now I can be the only man to defend it twice. So at the end of the day, I got history in my mind. But you know, the end goal, defending this belt is cool and all, but the end goal is the undisputed title, you know. And I believe Charles Oliveira being a very worthy opponent, you know, he was the last one to fight for a title. He was an undisputed title holder at one point. With a win over Dustin, with a win over him, if I can go out there, do a BMF moment again and get my hand raised, maybe we get me one step closer to the undisputed title.
And in the corner.
You know, not at all. You know, everybody always asks that question, you know, with the BMF title, is there a different way? It's a fight, man. It's just another fight, you know. Yeah, I think I'm a BMF in any fight I did, no title or not, you know, even in the undisputed title. So at the end of...
Now listen to this part, because it reveals everything about Max's mindset going into this fight. Holloway has openly addressed his own past errors and moments of vulnerability, which shows incredible maturity for a fighter at his level. He understands that at this elite stage, in a championship-level bout, one tiny mistake can instantly change the entire trajectory of the fight. But here's the kicker. Max isn't claiming that Charles is some invincible, unbeatable force. What he's stating with absolute clarity is that Oliveira is precisely the type of predator who will exploit any weakness if given even the slightest opportunity. That's what makes Charles so dangerous. He's not just skilled, he's opportunistic. The moment you give him an opening, whether it's a slight overextension on a strike or a momentary lapse in defense, he's going to capitalize on it. And Max knows that one mistake against a finisher like Charles could end his championship dreams permanently.
The thing that comes to my mind when I hear the name Charles Oliveira, you know, former champion, an animal, a killer. A lot of people talk about him in his jiu-jitsu, but he's putting guys down with his striking and then using his jiu-jitsu. So that guy's a dangerous man, you know. I got nothing but love and respect for him. But at the end of the day, March 7th, when those octagon doors close, he's just another guy. Oliveira's a killer, man. You know, that's all I can say. Everybody keep talking about jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu this, jiu-jitsu that. Go watch his tape back, bro. He's hurting guys on the feet, you know. He's hurting them with his boxing. He's hurting them with kicks, hurting them with knees, hurting them with elbows. He's hurting them in the clinch. The guy's a well-rounded fighter, you know. I think a lot of people look at him and call him a jiu-jitsu guy because of his finishes. Most of his finishes is with submissions, but the guy's hurting people on the feet, you know. He's ground and pounding people.
During the recent press conference, Max brought up something that nobody else is talking about, and it changes everything about how we should view this fight. He emphatically stated that this isn't just some random fight on a card for him. This is a seriously meaningful encounter that represents something bigger than just another victory. While his main objective absolutely remains that undisputed title, he fully understands the unique situation he's stepping into with this BMF bout. Here's what's wild, though. It was Charles Oliveira who was initially offered this opportunity, but Max views himself as taking this fight for what it represents to the fans and to the sport, rather than just for personal ambition. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Max revisited their initial meeting from 2015, describing it as a fight where the conclusion never provided a clear or satisfying result. The fight was abruptly stopped due to an injury to Oliveira well before any real action could play out. This inconclusive ending, this lingering question mark, is precisely why this highly anticipated rematch exists. Both fighters have been carrying that unfinished business for nearly a decade.
Just a dangerous man, you know, and those kind of things, when I think about it, brings a smile to my face, you know. These are the kind of people I want to beat. I want to beat the best guys in the world, and he's considered one of the best guys in the world right now. So, like I said, I'm on my way to an undisputed title, and he's just another man in the way. I mean, you know, against Charles Oliveira, you know, you gotta keep your mistakes to a minimum, to be honest. I mean, at anybody at this level, you need to keep your mistakes at a minimum. You know, it's we're dangerous people, especially when you get to these top 5 guys, man. They always find a way. How much times we see Hail Mary punches or Hail Mary submission out of nowhere? You know, this is the best guys in the world, and they're always in the fight. They're always gonna keep on fighting. So you gotta respect every aspect of the game, and I just can't wait. Like I've been saying, I can't wait to go out there, shut up.
But here's where Charles Oliveira's perspective completely flips the script on everything you think you know about this fight. For DISGRACE, the BMF title isn't some publicity stunt or meaningless belt. He speaks about it with genuine reverence, describing it as something deeply linked to heritage and legacy. This isn't about having another piece of hardware for photo opportunities. Charles genuinely sees this as a major highlight, a crowning achievement that could define his entire career. And get this, Charles makes it crystal clear that this fight wasn't simply handed to him on a silver platter. He explicitly requested Max Holloway. He wanted this specific pairing and the prestige that comes with the BMF title. Think about that for a second. Charles could have taken easier fights, could have worked his way back up the rankings gradually. Instead, he specifically asked for the most dangerous striker in the division. That tells you everything about his confidence level and what he believes this fight can do for his legacy.
You said you wanted this fight, but when the whole thing happened with Ilya Topuria, was any part of you hoping you would get the call for this interim fight instead?
It is what it is, you know. I want to get an undisputed title. It came with me with Charles for the BMF. We're here now.
And what is the unfinished business for you? Because you obviously were the winner of the first fight, even though it ended strangely.
I mean, you know, he had his injury, so at the end of the day, we get to figure out how it goes on March 7th. I'm just excited, man. He's a legend of the sport. He deserves this moment, and I can't wait to go out there and give it to him.
Hold up, because when Charles discusses how he envisions this fight unfolding, his strategy reveals something that could completely shock Max Holloway. Charles isn't confining himself to just one predetermined game plan. He's speaking with clear intent about pursuing relentless activity and finishing the fight whenever an opportunity presents itself. For Oliveira, this isn't about looking good or accumulating points on scorecards. It's about securing victory no matter what path the fight takes. But here's the deeper layer that most people are missing. Charles is simultaneously linking this specific bout to a much more expansive vision for his career. This fight represents his pathway back to title contention, and he's treating it like everything depends on it. Because honestly, it probably does. At 35 years old, Charles knows he doesn't have unlimited opportunities left. This could be his last realistic shot at proving he belongs at the very top of the lightweight division.
Former champion Charles Oliveira, who will fight for the BMF belt against Max Holloway. What does this BMF belt opportunity mean for you?
E com esse campeão dos leves aqui, Charles Oliveira, que agora vai lutar pelo cinturão do BMF contra o Max Holloway. O que o BMF significa para você?
Com certeza, algo gigante, um legado. Quando você fala sobre legado, você se torna campeão do BMF, é algo gigante.
For sure, something huge. Legacy, and when you talk about, being a BMF champion, that's huge for legacy.
And I know you asked for this fight against Max Holloway. How excited are you to throw down with Max? Because you both bring the fight. We know it's going to be an exciting fight. How would you describe how it's going to play out?
E a gente sabe que você pediu essa luta contra o Max e pediu esse BMF. A gente sabe que vocês dois gostam de luta, gostam de porrada, vão pra cima. Quão empolgado você ficou com essa luta?
Com certeza, 100%. Desde quando eu venho pedindo ela, eu sabia que essa luta ia acontecer. Então, com certeza, lutar contra um cara gigante como o Max vai ser muito top.
100% very excited. I knew that this fight was going to happen as soon as I asked for it. I'm very happy to fight against the guy.
Now here's where expert analysis starts revealing some uncomfortable truths about this matchup. Angelo Baidi offered insights that highlight exactly why this fight is so perfect for the BMF title. But he completely rejected the notion that this is simply a continuation of their 2015 encounter. While the records show Max winning that bout, Angelo made it clear that the fight barely began before it was stopped due to Charles' injury. Because of that crucial detail, Baidi views this as an entirely new matchup with a fresh slate. Think about it, both fighters are completely different athletes now. Max has evolved into one of the most dangerous volume strikers in MMA history, while Charles has developed into a submission specialist who can finish fights from anywhere. The fighters who step into the octagon for this rematch bear little resemblance to the versions of themselves from 2015.
Com certeza vai ser uma grande luta, né? Tudo pode acontecer. A gente tá falando sobre MMA, eu vou caçar o tempo inteiro, ou eu vou nocautear, eu vou finalizar, eu quero vencer.
For sure it's going to be a great fight. Listen, anything can happen. It's MMA. I'm going to be hunting all the time. May not knock him out, maybe finish him, but I'm going to for sure have my arm raised.
How much is the goal to get back to that lightweight title once again?
E qual é o quão grande é o objetivo que você tem também, além do BMF, de voltar a disputar o título dos leves?
As coisas acontecem no tempo de Deus, foi como eu falei, eu precisava de uma ou duas lutas para poder lutar pelo título, e aconteceu isso, essa luta ainda agora no Rio, venci uma grande luta, e agora vou começar o ano de 2026 com mais uma grande luta, vencendo o Max Holloway com certeza, sou o próximo da frente.
Things happen in God's time. I've always said this. I figured that I needed a couple of fights to get back into the title picture. I get that great win in Rio, come out with a win. Now I have a great fight coming up, beating Max.
Here's what's really interesting about the tactical breakdown. Angelo Baidi appreciated seeing footage of Charles exchanging strikes with Max in training, but he wasn't entirely convinced by it. From his perspective, Charles simply shouldn't remain in Max's striking domain for extended periods. The real advantage for Oliveira lies on the canvas, where he's demonstrated a willingness to submit elite competitors whenever the opportunity presents itself. But here's the genius of Charles' approach. Those takedown attempts aren't just about establishing ground control. They're about compelling Max to constantly worry about level changes, which completely alters his striking rhythm. Angelo dedicated significant analysis to how opponents often get sucked into Max's relentless tempo and high-volume striking. Rivals frequently get lured into stand-up battles, even when staying upright isn't strategically beneficial for them. Beatty believes Charles possesses the experience and fight IQ to avoid that trap, and even unsuccessful takedown attempts can disrupt Max's timing and create openings for different attacks.
Holloway taking on Charles Oliveira for the BMF belt. I'm not going to break down who Max is and who Charles is. You know who they are. One of them is the all-time significant strike king, and the other one's the all-time submission king. And that's what this belt is for. It's an amazing matchup. It's exactly why this belt exists. All-time significant strikes versus all-time submission king coming together for a belt that they otherwise would not be fighting. And as you know, this is a rematch from 2015. And if all you did was look at records, you would look at that and say, oh, Max Holloway beat Charles Oliveira by TKO. But that's not what happened. That's not how it went down. Really, nothing happened. And then about a minute and a half into the fight, Charles Oliveira shoots a takedown, somehow fucks his neck up, and the fight is waved off. It's a rematch on paper, but the first fight wasn't even a fight. And honestly, even if it was a fight, it was so long ago that I would break this down fresh anyway. This is an outstanding fight. We have two tremendous...
But wait, there's something way more significant happening here that changes the entire complexion of this fight. Recent analysis shows that Charles now proceeds much more deliberately during exchanges, a stark contrast to his former habit of rushing into chaotic scrambles. He now initiates grappling by driving opponents against the cage, utilizing pressure and position before securing dominance. This evolution is incredibly significant because it indicates a much more calculated and mature strategy that depends less on chaos and more on precise execution. Meanwhile, Max Holloway has shown in the lightweight division that his offensive volume and accuracy remain elite level. The argument isn't just that Max throws more strikes than opponents, it's that those strikes consistently connect more cleanly and cause cumulative damage. His movement sequences and timing deliver grinding punishment, particularly to the body, which enables him to win rounds incrementally without needing sudden fight-ending moments. Here's the kicker that nobody else is talking about, and it could determine the entire outcome of this fight. Multiple MMA experts characterize Charles as someone the UFC calls upon to bring pure chaos and unforgettable moments, not cautious point-fighting contests. That's precisely why this pairing makes so much sense from a promotional standpoint. Charles brings unpredictability, finishes, and relentless pressure that creates real tension with Max's high-volume striking style. But here's what's really wild about the bigger picture. Even though the winner will look impressive and stay relevant in title contention, this victory doesn't automatically clarify who gets the next undisputed title shot. The championship picture remains messy, with Islam Makhachev holding the belt and several contenders making cases for opportunities. This means both fighters are essentially gambling their positions on a fight that might not even lead directly to what they ultimately want. So there you have it. Max Holloway sees Charles as a stepping stone toward reclaiming championship gold, while Charles views this as his last realistic shot at proving he belongs at the top of the lightweight division. The BMF title adds prestige, but the real stakes involve their legacies and future title opportunities. What makes this so captivating is watching two fighters who have reached the summit of the sport, absorbed devastating setbacks, but still believe they have the fire to dominate. This isn't just about another victory on their records. This is about who gets to control their destiny in a division that's more competitive than it's ever been. The winner stays relevant in title discussions, while the loser might be looking at a long road back to contention. So here's my question for you, drop it in the comments. Do you think Max's volume striking overwhelms Charles, or does Oliveira's finishing ability prove too dangerous for even the blessed one? If this breakdown helped you understand what's really at stake in this fight, smash that like button, subscribe for more MMA analysis, and hit the notification bell because this division is about to get even crazier after these two legends settle their unfinished business. I'll see you in the next one. But before you go anywhere, we need to talk about something that could completely change how this fight plays out, and it's something that neither fighter wants to acknowledge publicly. The timing of this BMF title fight is absolutely critical for both of their careers, but there's a hidden element that makes this matchup way more dangerous than anyone realizes. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. While Max talks about this being a stepping stone, the reality is that a loss here doesn't just derail his championship aspirations, it potentially ends his time as an elite lightweight. Think about it. Max moved up from featherweight where he was the king, and now he's trying to prove he belongs among the absolute killers at 155. A devastating loss to Charles, especially if it comes by submission or knockout, sends a message to the entire division that Max can't hang with the best lightweights. That's career-defining pressure that he's carrying into this octagon. But Charles is dealing with an even more brutal reality check. At 35, coming off losses to Islam Makhachev, this isn't just about proving he belongs at the top anymore. This is about proving he can still compete at championship level, period. The lightweight division moves fast, and older fighters get forgotten quickly if they can't deliver when it matters most. Charles knows that a loss here, especially a decision loss where he looks like he's lost a step, could mean watching younger, hungrier fighters take his spot in the title picture permanently. Now here's where the psychological warfare gets really interesting, and it's something that could determine the entire fight before they even touch gloves. Max has been subtly planting seeds about Charles' mental state, talking about how Oliveira specifically requested this fight. On the surface, that sounds like respect, but there's a deeper implication there. Max is suggesting that Charles needed this fight more than he did, that Oliveira was the one chasing this matchup. That's the kind of mental edge that elite fighters use to gain confidence going into dangerous situations. Charles, on the other hand, has been playing a completely different psychological game. By talking about the BMF title with such reverence, he's essentially telling Max that this belt means more to him than it does to Holloway. He's suggesting that while Max sees this as just another step, Charles sees it as a career-defining moment. That creates two completely different energy levels going into this fight. One fighter treating it like business, the other treating it like everything depends on it. But here's the tactical element that could expose both fighters in ways they're not expecting. Max's volume striking game has been incredibly effective, but it's also predictable in some ways. Charles has had years to study exactly how Max breaks down opponents with that relentless pace. Oliveira knows that Max is going to come forward, throw combinations, and try to overwhelm him with activity. The question is whether Charles can time those exchanges perfectly and catch Max in transitions when he's slightly off balance or overextended. Meanwhile, Charles' submission game is legendary, but Max has shown incredible submission defense throughout his career. The real danger for Holloway isn't getting caught in a submission attempt, it's getting hurt on the feet, and then being vulnerable to grappling exchanges. Charles has been finishing people with strikes before taking them down, and that combination could be devastating against a volume striker who's used to controlling the pace and distance of fights. Here's something that's flying completely under the radar but could determine everything. The BMF title fight is scheduled for 5 rounds, which changes the entire dynamic of how both fighters need to approach this matchup. Max thrives in longer fights where he can break opponents down gradually with volume and pace. But Charles is most dangerous when he can explode in moments and create chaos that leads to finishes. 5 rounds favors Max's style, but it also gives Charles more opportunities to find those fight-ending moments. What makes this even more complex is the judging criteria for BMF title fights. While it's still scored like a regular fight, there's an expectation of aggression and finishing attempts that could influence how both fighters approach each round. Charles might feel pressured to take more risks to live up to the BMF reputation, while Max might be more willing to engage in exchanges that he'd normally avoid in a title eliminator. The training camp reports have been absolutely fascinating, and they reveal strategies that neither fighter wants their opponent to know about. Max has reportedly been working extensively with wrestlers and submission specialists, which suggests he's preparing for Charles to be more aggressive with takedown attempts than people expect. Meanwhile, Charles has been sparring with high-volume strikers and working on counter-striking, which indicates he might be planning to use Max's aggression against him rather than trying to outwork him in exchanges. But here's the really wild part about the stakes that nobody's talking about. The winner of this fight doesn't just get the BMF title and stay relevant in title discussions. They potentially become the most marketable contender in the lightweight division. Both Max and Charles are fan favorites who bring excitement and finishing ability, but the winner establishes themselves as the clear alternative to Islam Makhachev's wrestling-heavy style. That's worth millions of dollars in future fight purses and endorsement opportunities. The loser faces a completely different reality. A decisive loss here could mean taking fights against younger, hungrier contenders who see them as stepping stones rather than legends. That's the brutal truth about combat sports at the highest level. One fight can change everything, and both Max and Charles understand that their legacies are on the line in ways that go far beyond just winning or losing. So when you're watching this fight, don't just look at the techniques and strategies. Pay attention to who wants it more, who's willing to take the bigger risks, and who can handle the pressure of knowing that their entire future in the sport might depend on what happens in those 25 minutes. Because that's what separates good fighters from legends, and legends from champions.